You're about to enjoy a Cloudcast original. Local stories, local storytellers, local brands.
Have you ever felt that you as a woman may not appear to measure up when you see incredible women in strong roles? You may be surprised when hearing from women in these positions and how we all share many of the same challenges. Thank you for joining us for the CEO Leading In podcast with Rebecca Jones as we share the journeys of women.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Jones, your host of CEO. We are on an exploration together to discover more about the personal journeys of incredible women in both career and life. We all have paths to share that sometimes take incredible turns, deep resilience, and courage to navigate. My hopes are that the challenges shared here encourage women to take leaps of faith and growth when a journey feels too difficult or unachievable. There is great strength deep within each one of us. These stories are meant to share the ways strong women have taken their dreams to strive and thrive to new heights despite their rocky paths and found a way to lead in. I'm here this morning with Stephanie San Antonio from SSA Insurance Services. She is president and CEO. And Stephanie, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
We are so excited to have you with us today. And we want to hear all about your journey and all of the fun ways that you have started this business and thrived. And you started it back when?
In 2013, yeah. This year will be its 8th year in business.
Wonderful. Well, let's hear a little bit about how you got here.
Sure. It has definitely been a journey. I think one unique thing about this business is that unlike most people my age, I have actually had one career and one career only. So I started part-time actually going to school at UCSD in the financial planning world. So I was part-time as an assistant. And then when I graduated, kind of moved into full-time operations for a financial planning firm. And I spent 10 years there building up the benefits division. And after 10 years, realized it's time to start my own. I knew that deep down, I was an entrepreneur at heart and needed to step into leadership and decided to start my own agency.
Well, that's pretty exciting because a lot of people don't have the courage to do that. They get very complacent and think, okay, this is safe. And I think as women, we tend to do that a little bit more. So we're going to go a little bit finding out about you, Stephanie. So why don't you share maybe a fun story from your childhood that people might not know about you?
Sure. One thing that comes to mind is I grew up at a lake in Central California. My dad owned a marina at the lake, and so we had jet ski rentals, boat rentals. We had a convenience store and a gas station. And when I was 8, 9 years old, we had the cash registers that did not tell you how much change to give back. And so it was a great lesson in math to actually be able to ring somebody up at 8 years old and be able to count the change when they gave you a $20 bill. And it was just great work experience, being so young and just being out there on the lake working. And I think the most fun was when you got tips. And so people would be so impressed with how young we were and with my brother and I and working that I think one gentleman, after we had pumped his gas on the boat, it was a $100 tip. And I'll never forget pocketing that money and not wanting my dad to know.
Wow, that's hilarious. Oh, my gosh. Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's one of the things that our young people really are missing, and that is counting back change and being able to figure that out. I remember one time, and I was a cashier a few times in my life. So I remember one time the power had gone out and everyone's going, oh my gosh, what do we do now? And it's like, well, you count the change back. And so, now I really think that is something that every young person should learn. So I think that's what you should say to young people. Learn how to count change back because truly, we really do rely too much on technology. And I think that kind of takes the human part out of it. So anyway, so I have a question. Everyone has like a word that describes who they are. What do you think that word is for you?
I'd have to say I feel like outgoing would be a word. I'd like to think more optimistic. I think everything in life that comes to you, you could look at it a certain way. I really do believe every moment, every experience is a lesson that the universe is teaching you. And so even if it's a negative experience, I know, as I know you've been through, divorce was something that I've been through that was a twist and turn that I never thought I'd go through in life. And that was a huge learning experience for me. And from the very minute that this divorce process started, I looked at it as an opportunity and a commitment to make sure that looking back on that experience, both he and I operated looking back knowing we wanted to be proud of how we handled ourselves. So I think just optimistic in everything, even when there's moments in life that are rough.
That's a really good quality to have. I think especially now that, things sometimes look very gloomy and I think if you're not optimistic, it's hard to have hope. And, during times like these and really everyday life, I mean, really, when you do have tough things that you have to get through, if you're not optimistic and you have no hope, how do you get through it? So I think that would be very difficult. So
I agree. It's always just looking at it like, okay, this sucks. Like it's really being honest with yourself too. There's moments in life that happen. It's this sucks. I don't really want to be experiencing this right now, but what am I being taught? What's the lesson I need to learn here? And just changing the eyes and the glasses and lens that you're looking through to see the beauty in the experience. And those are the moments that you tend to learn the most and evolve the most, right?
Yeah,
and that's kind of why we're here. I think just the constant evolution through this experience and journey that's presented to us.
Absolutely. So how do you measure success?
I think it's an inner feeling that I have. I've thought a lot about even just sitting here looking back on life. Do I feel like I'm a successful person? In fact, one of the questions I asked myself many times growing up, I grew up with my parents were divorced since I was 2 years old. And, I watched my mom work her butt off raising 3 kids and had majority custody. And there were often moments in life where we didn't have a lot of money. We did live from apartment to apartment. And I often wondered, gosh, am I going to be successful growing up? And it was just that was one question I remember in my childhood constantly asking myself, not knowing what that answer would be. It wasn't like, oh, I won't be successful, or I definitely wasn't letting my current experience dictate my future. But it was just an interesting question that just kept coming up for me. And so sitting here now, years later, looking back on my life and my journey so far, I definitely feel like I've been successful. I also feel like there's lots of more growth to experience. Ultimately, I think it's a feeling that I get. It's the feeling that I get when we help a client and we make their day. It's a feeling I get when we're at the grocery store and we say hi and thank you to the cashier that we often ignore, and because it's a transaction and most people are on their phones. It's making somebody's day so that they can then make somebody else's day because of the experience that and the interaction you've had and the connection you've had.
Paying it forward.
That's the feeling. It's those moments where I feel like that's a win for me. When somebody says thank you, I appreciate you, or I can tell that there's a moment and a connection that's been made that hopefully has changed their mindset.
Well, that's being seen too. I think a lot of times you're right. Everyone's going about their day. Everyone's so busy. And it's easy to just be in, trying to get through the day. But to be in the actual moment and being engaged is probably more difficult. But you're right. I think a lot of times, and I tell people during the pandemic all the time, remember the people that maybe don't have a family close, your neighbors that might need you to help them out, elderly, folks that can't get out and do all of the things that they need to do, because many times they really are not seen. And, it's good to always definitely remember them and, again, make their day. And I love that. And I didn't realize that your parents were divorced. My mom had 3 kids, too. I was a little bit older, so I was 11 when my parents got divorced, but very similar.
My sister,
very
sister.
Similar circumstances, so very interesting. So something that you failed at that you learned, and I'm sure there's maybe you failed at something, but I'm sure at the end there's something that you learned that actually was a win. So why don't you share a failure that
Gosh,
turned into a
I
win?
feel like one thing that comes to mind is, having the business for 8 years. And, I think early on in starting the business, I knew I wanted to be a leader and I wanted to grow this organization. I don't think I had quite developed the leadership skill set that I feel like I'm sitting and owning now. I'd have to say I probably failed at leading a team early on. We have a couple of employees that didn't make it, that probably could have or should have. It was just I didn't have the capacity at that moment to really lead like I wish I had. I have now that I wish I had then. So I look back thinking, okay, what are those lessons? What are those lessons in life, and how have I failed them that I can then make sure that I'm not failing my current team, who is a rock star team. Everybody's super driven, loves what they do, and wants equally to see this company grow as much as I do. And that's kind of that really is what drives me now, is making sure that I'm setting a good example and I'm a role model for the females that are on my team. We have an all-female team at our agency, and that's just my calling right now, is to make sure that I'm setting a good example and leading them.
Well, and back to what you said earlier about an evolution. I think, you start out in a certain spot, but you are growing all the time. And the experiences, as you had mentioned, really help shape that too. And so I don't be too hard on yourself. Don't be too hard on yourself.
We tend to do that, don't
we? Well, we do. I think as women, we're very hard on ourselves. I think we're our own worst critics,
I agree.
Unfortunately. And we have all these things that we look at outside that and I try not to judge myself based on other people, because there's always going to be someone more beautiful, talented, smarter, better dressed, that have things that I don't have. But I try to rest, and I think you do too, I like who I am and being confident in that, because there's nobody out there like me, same as you. And I think that's probably a good thing to share with women and in general. Find your thing and grow that, and take that and move it forward in different ways, because no one else has that, exactly what you have. And again, not be your worst critic. So how do you balance your life, your work life and your home life and all of those responsibilities? How does that look?
I think my journey over the course of, since I've actually had the business, over the course of 8 years, I've had 2 children. I'm a mom to 2 lovely boys. I have a 4.5-year-old and an 8-month-old. He just turned 8 months old on Mother's Day, actually. So that was special. But it's definitely hard. I don't know that I have a secret sauce to work-life balance. I'm a Libra, and that's one of our struggles. It's the balance part of being a Libra, and also being a mom and a CEO and trying to do it all successfully. I think it's a journey that many young moms have when they're the CEO of a business, and also don't want to be bombarded with the mom guilt that I think is just natural to have when you're running a business and want to provide it all to your company. But then you have these beautiful children and you want to be that mom for. I think one of the things that keeps me really focused and knowing that my purpose is both is that these children are getting to see a great role model, somebody who wakes up and who works and goes to work and can operate a business successfully and can lead a team. And that's the experience that they're getting to see. And I think that's a huge lesson for them. It's teaching them and them seeing hard work from an early age, to seeing success and what that looks like. So I think that drives me. I'd have to say, poor husband, he gets the back seat at the moment. I won't lie. But we're hanging in there, and it's a time in our lives that we know we'll get back, when the kids get a little bit older. I do think it's important to have date nights, and we are actively doing that. I think lots of understanding and compassion for each other and where we're at in life is also really important, and to have a team that can support that as well.
Well, I think the driven part when you were a child, to just, showing that to your kids, instilling that in them. My mom actually, when my dad and my mom got divorced, my mom didn't have any skills. So she started cleaning houses. She's now a realtor, but she went through a couple of different jobs to get to that. She would work all day, go to school all night. I mean, the sacrifice that I witnessed is very important for who I've become. So I think your kids are definitely going to benefit from that. And, again, not having that guilt and finding time to date your husband. That's huge. And I hear that a lot. And, I look back and, I have regret that, that just wasn't my path. It might be someday, but I think that is really important for people to remember when they're thinking about how do I balance. You've got to find time and you've got to make time, and it's got to be very intentional. So thank you for sharing that. So as a female leader, what is probably one of the most significant barriers that you experience?
It's interesting when I think of that. I do think time is a huge barrier. It's probably the biggest barrier. I often talk about, a lot of times people think money is a big barrier, and I think time is our most precious asset. And we are limited. We can always make money, we can always make more, but we can never get the time back that we've lost. And so I think about that. Going back to being intentional, I think the biggest barrier is just is being a mom and having, I'm still breastfeeding and I'm still in it. So, when I'm here, I know that I need to pump, and I don't know when that'll be, but that'll take away time that I'll need. I think it's just being really intentional with the time that we do have and making sure that, we're intentional with it. I also think that because being a mom, there's a lot of requirements, especially when you have young children and you have a baby. I need to be there. And only I can be there. And so I'd say if I were a dad, yes, everybody, in many relationships and parenting is 50-50. But when you have young babies, it's the baby wants the mom and the baby needs the mom. And so that's me right now. So I think right now it's time when I get to a certain place and he's, one, and I don't need to be breastfeeding him all the time and he can have other milk, I think I'll get some time back. But I think for me, time is the biggest barrier.
Well, and it's good to prioritize that too and know that there's an end where he needs you all the time. But you're right. 8 months, of course he's going to need you. And, it's good that you're in that position. And not every mom is, but they've got to, again, let that guilt go to the side and think, okay, I can make it up in other ways. And that, just balance is really tough, I think. And again, back to us being our worst critics and saying, oh my gosh, now I have all this guilt. So, yeah, we need to always make sure. And I think having a village and the people in your life, the women in your life, encouraging one another, because we're not always going to be in a certain spot like that. But also, we've got to encourage our sisters. And I tell young people this all the time. I actually started a mentor group at the Boys and Girls Club. And I say to them, one thing you've always got to do is build up your sisters. And it really helps us through these more difficult times, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So as far as role models go and mentors, do you have anyone in your life that has really helped shape you to who you are today?
It's the stereotypical parents, I'd have to say. Both of them, my mom and my dad. My mom, like I mentioned, my parents divorced when I was 2, and I got to witness my mom getting a job for the first time and making, probably with not a lot of skills, very minimal, and raising 3 children. I was 2, my brother was 9, my sister was 12, and she freaking did it. And looking back, I think I appreciate her now that I'm a mom more than ever and trying to balance. It's like, here I am. I have a husband who supports me and really does share 50-50 as much as he can. And my mom did it. She held a job, a full-time job, raised 3 kids on her own. She's never remarried. I'm like, there's mornings where I'm trying to give my son a bath and feed my 4.5-year-old and try to figure out the school thing. And I have my husband there. And I'm like, how did you do this and get us all to school and pick us all up? It blows my mind. So she's a role model from a standpoint of work-life balance, and just how she did it, I still don't understand. And my dad, I think it's the hard work. He worked his ass off on that marina every day. I think his only day off was Christmas. Christmas Day was his only day off. He's never traveled. He's really just still today he's retired, but every day he gets up and he takes care of his property. He has 12 acres and he works. I think I took from that hard work. What I also took from that is making sure that I'm finding the time for my family that he struggled finding for us. And so, So I take from each of them things that have really, ingrained into me who I am and how I parent and what parts of that I really want to take and provide for my children.
And, you just mentioned something that is, I think, really important about leadership, and that is you look at leaders and you take parts of who they are and you make that your own because, of course, you're not going to be exactly like someone else because you have your own style and your own things that are important to you. So I'm really glad you shared that because I think we again, being our worst critics, we're always going, oh, well, this person does that great. Why can't I be more like them? But, really taking and, shaping yourself after different parts of a lot of different leaders is really, I think, the best way to become the best version of yourself. So thanks for sharing that. So, about your journey as to what led you to insurance, how did that choose you or did you choose it?
Gosh, that's definitely something I think chose me. I don't know that anybody grows up wanting to, sell insurance. But I really love it. And it goes beyond that, right? I mean, our mission as a company at SSA Insurance Services is really to create a culture in companies that is really around intentional and healthy living. And that's it, right? And we do that in a variety of ways for our clients that use us for benefits. And that's really kind of implementing health insurance benefits that are meaningful for their employees, that really align with their company culture. We provide a lot of wellness aspects to the benefits program. I mean, again, we're really wanting companies to showcase their benefits, but also instead of just providing them with insurance that's going to, help them when they get sick, what can we do to really shape an organization to help employees take better care of themselves today so that they don't need the insurance later, right? And it's everybody taking part in a lot of issues that we have in our healthcare system. So I think if we all take ownership and we all take responsibility, the biggest focus for us is wellness and helping our clients get to that and how they can evolve their company.
Well, in the big picture, that's very good for you as an insurance company, but truly it is about helping people live the best life they possibly can. Because when we're not sick, it's better, of course. I mean,
Absolutely.
so I love that you're doing that because and I'm assuming that has to do with mental wellness and physical wellness and then also preventive like, yoga and things like that. I know that at my work, we talk a little bit about that too. And we employ a lot of different things with our employees to make sure that they are taking care of themselves and staying fit and, stretching and especially, our employees that are physical workers because, a lot of those jobs are very hard on their bodies. And so it's important. So I love that you're doing that. What about like nutrition? Do you guys ever get into that?
A little bit. We have a monthly webinar for our clients and contacts that will bring in speakers and educate and empower our clients. One of the things we're doing right now is with our employees and that we actually launched for all of our clients is a 9-week Happy, Healthy, Wealthy challenge. It's led by a coach named Jim Bunch. He's located in Solana Beach, so he's local. He's amazing. We get on a call once a week to just really understand how we can change our subconscious by changing and really just looking at how our feelings and our thoughts become our beliefs that then trigger our actions and how we can change all of that so that we can create and form positive, healthy habits. And so this challenge, we're on week 5 right now. It's great to do it because as a team, we're all collectively doing this together. And we actually sponsored our clients to be able to do this with us. So we're on a call every single week. And we're really focusing on how we can change our mindset and really have an outcome at the end of this 9-week process to be happier, healthier, and wealthier.
Well, that's great because you don't even honestly think about an insurance company being very intentional like that. They just, oh yeah, we'll sell you the insurance and then we just move on. And you're not maintaining those relationships and really working on finding ways to enhance people's lives. So I do love that. So what are the lessons I think that you could share with young women that they could apply to their different careers?
So it's funny. I think about when I was younger, I used to network, when I was 21, and I was the youngest one. I mean, our age, in our world, I'd say the average broker is probably 65 years old. So if you can imagine, I'm starting in this industry at 21. I graduate from college. I show up at these networking events and people are looking at me like, who are you? You have zero experience. You're young, you're female, you're young. Like, why should I talk to you? What value can you bring to me and my organization? And so I think going back to barriers, that was probably one, is just being younger in the industry when you're dealing with a sea of men and older men that are established and have credibility. But I showed up, and one of the things I would recommend to young women or anybody entering into their career is just stand tall, stand in yourself, really get clear on, even if you're insecure, what can mask that is that security. It's if you have self-doubt, mask it, and mask it with confidence. Stand tall, and even if you're insecure and you have a ton of self-doubt going on, you show up an event or just show up standing tall, and people will start seeing you and have confidence in you, even if you don't have confidence in yourself. I think that's what I did. I'd show up at those events and I'd be nervous as hell, and I would stand up and I would stand tall and I would smile, and then I would basically just protrude that confidence, even if I had a ton of self-doubt going on inside.
Well, don't you think too, I don't know if you do this, but I've always done this. If I feel like, oh gosh, I'm walking into a situation, it's going to be a tough one, I think being prepared is a really important part of that. And so I've always kind of compensated for my confidence of knowing my subject matter. And so I had someone say to me several years ago, oh my gosh, like, you're always so prepared. You always know exactly what you're talking about. And I said, well, you know what? I have insecurities. I think we all do, of course. But my insecurity is people will judge me by just looking at me, not trying to figure out who I am, what I have to say, not really caring, but making a judgment about me. And so what I do is I get all the information that I can on my subject. I immerse myself into it. And then when I go to a situation where I think, okay, they're going to start judging me, and then I open my mouth, they go, whoa, wait a second, what just happened here? Because I over-prepare. You actually seem like you would be the same.
Oh my gosh. If you would have seen me early on when I was 22, 23, networking, making appointments with prospects, I would show up at the prospect's office with this 300-page proposal. And I had gone through that, and I knew exactly what I was going to propose and make a recommendation on. And I had all of the information. If they needed it, it was there. And I look at that 300-page proposal as like, that was my security blanket. That was what I needed to prove to them. I did all the work. Here it is, And it's funny, fast forward now, 17 years into the business and doing the same thing. I often look back. I don't have that 300-pound proposal or 300-page proposal. I now have the confidence to know, and I've earned the trust over the years that they can trust that they know I've done the research. They know I've prepared, and so it's gotten easier and easier. But I'd say in the beginning that 300-page proposal was definitely my security blanket.
Well, and that's building your credibility. Yeah. And your brand, I think, is probably credibility because you have been doing it for so long and you've done your homework and you've done your research. So when you walk in, you've already done all of that. And, for young women just starting out in anything, I mean, this can translate to any job and any situation because knowing your content, doing that homework, being prepared, I don't think there's anything that could actually overcome the lack of confidence in a new situation, a new job. And we're always uncomfortable. I know when I see women and they say, oh gosh, you've been doing this so long, you're so confident. Every situation is different. And every time you walk into a new situation, you have to start out at the same spot, even if you've been doing it for a very long time, because if it's something new, it is going to be a little bit different. And you talked a little bit about it, earlier, just the preparation and, different situations. Anyway, so, you walk into a room of young women and they look at you and they want to hear what you have to say. What advice would you say? You're all going to be starting out in some sort of career. What advice would you give them?
I think most people use logic to make decisions. And I'd say my most successful years in my career were when I led from my heart, when I was happiest. Um, you know, going through a lot and tough times with divorce. The year I actually had my first child and was my most successful year. And I think I was leading from my heart. I knew where I needed to be. And it actually wasn't, I knew that I needed to be a mom. And did I still run the business? Absolutely. And was that still a priority? Absolutely. But my number one priority was raising my child in those younger years. And that was actually my most successful year as a career, because I was the energy and the vibration that I was giving off was happiness. It was love, and it was leading from my heart, knowing my priorities. And with that, the energy that I gave off, it came back to me twofold, because I attracted positive people in my life. I attracted positive clients. People were drawn to our agency and to me in a way that allowed us to grow tremendously. So when I look back at that, it's like once I start making decisions solely based on logic, it doesn't translate into business as much as I think it would. And so you constantly have to go back to just trusting your intuition and trusting your gut. And a lot of that comes from leading from the heart.
Well, going back to the one word that I see in you, just I don't know, it just hit me right now. I see a very authentic person. And I think as a woman, being led with our heart is something that, of course, men can't do because it's different. It's just different. I mean, we are uniquely different.
Yeah.
And really embracing that and being authentic and, coming forward and saying, hey, I want to help you because you really do want to help them. Coming from that place, of that's uniquely to us as for women, I think don't forget that. And I know a lot of women try to come off a little bit differently, sometimes too strong. I think embracing being a woman is a good thing myself because we are different. We can still be strong, but we can also be very, very loving and lead people with our, like you said, with your heart. So what's next on your journey? What do you have planned? Do you have anything exciting coming up, Stephanie?
I think I've just, we're coming up June 17th is our 8-year anniversary of the agency. We've tripled in size since the beginning, and we've grown our team as well. And I think for me, it's stepping into more speaking opportunities. It's stepping into leadership in a different way. I feel now really compelled to lead this all-female team that we've established. A lot of them are younger. A lot of them have come straight out of college. This is their first full-time work experience, and I want it to be a positive one. And I want them to realize the value of working for a small business. The majority of San Diego County is small business, and I want them to see that they have an impact. They have a direct impact on our business, our growth, our success. And I want them to have this, I know they're not going to be with me until, they retire. They have many more years. And as we know, millennials tend to, have jobs for a couple of years and move on to the next, right? And I just want them to feel empowered by a leader and be inspired. And whatever they take from this experience, that it can be a stepping stone and a growth opportunity for them to whatever is going to inspire them and in their career path.
Well, you're right. I think this experience, which seems to be, it would be very positive working with you because you are so positive. I think it really will shape who they become later on in life, and taking the uniqueness of being a woman and not being afraid to talk about it and moving that to wherever they go is going to also shape everything around them as well. So I love your style. I think it's really just very authentic. And I think that's important in a business world, but I think even more so as a woman, being able to embrace that part of you and, translate that into your style. So thank you so much for joining us today, Stephanie. We really appreciate it. And I'm excited to watch what you do next.
Thank you.
Who comes next after you, and what you're going to do in the next 8 years of your business. I appreciate
it. Won't be having any more children. I will guarantee you that. I guess I can't guarantee it quite yet, but that's not in the plan. I'm just really excited to now be in a position to to really focus on the business, the impact we can have on our community, and be able to give back.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now that was powerful. We hope you've been lifted and encouraged by today's inspiring voice. Always remember that life doesn't look exactly the same for each one of us. Never stop dreaming, striving, and thriving. In future episodes, we look forward to bringing you powerful stories from amazing women who learn how to lead in to challenges. Thank you for listening and being part of our community with CEO host Rebecca Jones.
You have been listening to a Cloudcast original. Local stories, local storytellers, local brands. Find more stories at cloudcast.us.